This is Between the Brackets, a MediaWiki podcast, episode 47, November 12th, 2019. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren. This is a special episode because my guest is Jeroen De Dauw, who is a MediaWiki developer and consultant with a special focus on Semantic MediaWiki and Wikidata/Wikibase. He's the third consultant in a row who's been on the show, although each one has been quite different in terms of their work, so I don't think that's a big deal. And he's the first Belgian on the podcast, for anyone keeping track. But what makes this episode special is that Jeroen is the closest thing there is to my protege, I would say. All the way back in 2009, I mentored my very first Google Summer of Code project to create an extension initially known as Semantic Layers, and Jeroen was my student. Semantic Layers turned into the extensions Semantic Maps, and those eventually just turned into the Maps extension, which is widely in use and which Jeroen still maintains. Just a few months after that project, he became one of the first consultants for my then new company, WikiWorks, which, by the way, just had its 10th anniversary. A year or two after that, he became a core developer of Semantic MediaWiki, and then one of the key developers on the Wikidata project. He also worked for a while for the Wikimedia Foundation. He most recently launched his own MediaWiki consulting company, Professional.Wiki, with another main maintainer of Semantic MediaWiki, Karsten Hofmeyer. Anyway, I don't know what role I've had in all this, but I'm proud of at least having given him a start in the worlds of MediaWiki and SMW. So, Jeroen, it's great to talk to you as always, and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where do you live?
I currently live in Berlin. I moved here in 2012 for the Wikidata project, and I've stuck around ever since.
Yeah. So we'll get to the Wikidata stuff later, but how is your German at this point?
Oh no, that question is not allowed. Yeah, it's that bad.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I think you've answered it nonetheless. Yeah, that's fine. So back in 2009 or maybe earlier, how did you find out about MediaWiki and specifically my Google Summer of Code project?
Well, I discovered Google Summer of Code, and I figured I wanted to give that a try. So I was looking through the list of various projects that you could contribute to, and back then I had mostly experience with PHP, so I was looking through the open source projects with PHP that were participating in Summer of Code. In there you had MediaWiki and some other stuff. I applied for some MediaWiki projects and also some other things, though I don't quite remember what those were. And since I had done some presentation in high school about Wikipedia, I kind of knew some stuff about it already, and yeah, that seemed quite interesting. And yeah, the project that you were mentoring got accepted. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, it's funny how things can come off looking preordained or something in retrospect, but you could have ended up on another project and everything might have been different, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose that's the butterfly effect in action there.
Sure. Was Brian Vibber involved in some way that you saw a talk by him or something? I can't remember now.
Yeah, now you bring it up, I think that's true. Yeah, I saw some talk of him at FOSDEM or maybe some recording. My memory on that is very vague. I'm just remembering it now since you bring it up.
Yeah, okay. What was your programming experience at that point?
Also, I did the Summer of Code thing in 2009, and that was straight after I came out of high school. And back then, I had done some small projects for local businesses, like ad hoc things. And the last 2 years in high school, I also had programming courses. So I had been messing around with various things for about 5 years already back then, I think, which started with GeoCities, I think. And I wanted to have these terrible JavaScript widgets on my webpage. So I would go to other web pages that had them and then like try to copy the right part and like kind of do a binary search. Yeah, that's how it started.
Yeah. So most Google Summer of Code students who do Wikimedia or MediaWiki projects go on to do other things, sadly. They rarely even end up staying in open source. What was it about MediaWiki or Semantic MediaWiki specifically that made you want to keep going with it?
Well, I had a lot of fun doing it. That was one part. Definitely, I found working with you in those first 2 years or so really pleasant. And then there were consulting opportunities. So I had opportunities to fund myself continuing doing that work. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's great to hear. So the very next year in 2010, there's a lesser known project of yours. You worked on another Google Summer of Code project, this time with Brian Vibber, who we mentioned before, as the mentor. It was to create an extension management platform for MediaWiki so people could install and update extensions directly from the web interface, the way you can do it in WordPress. That actually comes up quite a bit on this podcast. When I ask people what the biggest weakness of MediaWiki is, I think they always say, it's either that or the lack of good read access control. But I think most people don't know that there actually was a project to try to add that in, which you were in charge of. What happened with that project?
Yeah, I think I was a bit in over my head for that one. And basically, I didn't get any mentorship from Brian. The contrast with the project that we did was very big.
All right, well.
I mean, I talked to him like a few times, but yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
And for that project, you really need involvement with the foundation as well and buy-in, quite different than the Maps extension that we did, which was kind of separate. And that buy-in wasn't really there, so yeah.
Do you think if you had more time, another summer or some other length of time or better mentorship to finish that feature, it could have been part of MediaWiki already, or was there just really no consensus to get it into the code?
I think it would have been very different, very difficult either way to get it into MediaWiki core, given the politics and so on. And I've actually recently came across some stuff from probably the MediaWiki stakeholder group, or from some conference where people were talking about this thing as well, about how to get to a point where you can install extensions with UI and manage things. And
well, sure, yeah.
One of the things there was that it's probably good to create this separate from MediaWiki, so not building something into MediaWiki itself or as an extension on top, but having a separate application, which then also wouldn't be accessible via the same web routes as MediaWiki, which could make from a design perspective, that sounds interesting. It removes a bunch of problems.
Yeah, that is interesting. It doesn't actually have to be part of MediaWiki. That's true. It just has to modify the code, or modify the file system. Yeah, I never thought of that actually. Well, yeah, I hope it works out. Yeah, I mean, I know that there are people trying to do it. So yeah.
Yeah, there's been some efforts by other people over the years doing something similar, but I don't think any of them have gone really far.
Well, it should. Well, one way in which it's easier now than when you were working on it is those extension.json files that potentially might make it a little more streamlined, maybe. I don't know. It's still a challenge. So anyway, back to your history. I think it was just a year after that, in 2011, when Denny Vrandicic announced that he had gotten funding to start working on Wikidata, and that he was looking for developers to work on it in Berlin at the Wikimedia Deutschland office. What were you thinking when you heard that announcement? Do you remember?
I actually don't think I heard this announcement.
Okay.
The first time I heard about it, I think was from Danny himself directly. And this was at SMWCon, I suppose in 2011 in Berlin. I don't recall if you were there, but Danny was there and Marcus was there.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. And after the conference, while we were walking to some restaurant or something like that, Danny asked me, or he told me, we're going to do this Wikidata thing. Would you be interested in joining the team?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what did you think when you heard that? Did you have any? Were you immediately, excited about the idea? Did you hesitate? Did you know that it would lead to you living in Germany for the next 7+ years after that?
Right. Well, I suppose it took me some time to think through what this Wikidata thing actually is and what Danny told me actually meant. And I also wasn't very keen on moving to Berlin. So I think he made it clear right away that would be a condition to have the whole team in Berlin. But yeah, right. I for whatever reason decided this was a good idea to do. And yeah, of course it's a big impact project, so that was exciting aspects there. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience for me, since before then I had been working as a self-employed. I've never worked in a team at that point, besides doing some forms of collaboration, like for instance with you. But that's quite different than working in an actual development team.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm very happy I made this choice. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm also happy I moved to Berlin.
Oh, cool. What was the size of the team? How many people were actually working on the software?
I think we had 8 developers, something like that, and then 3 or 4 management people. So it was slightly over 10 people, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, what kind of things were you working on specifically?
We didn't really have assigned roles for things we should do specifically per person. So it's more like we need to get certain things done, and the whole team is responsible for that. So people did start to specialize. So we had some people that kind of formed the front-end team, and they focused on working on the UI and the JavaScript stuff, and then some people more focusing on the back-end stuff. And so I've been all over the place with on the Wikibase software. And then only after the first year, there was some more explicit roles. And back when I left Wikimedia Deutschland earlier this year, the organization as a whole grew quite a bit in those 7 years. And now there is a design team, so user interface design. I got to the position of software architect. So I had more responsibilities of focusing on code quality and also education within the organization.
Yeah, right. We'll get to some of that other stuff. Is there anything you can point to in the Wikibase/Wikidata structure or interface or whatever it is that was your idea or your handiwork? Just wondering.
I focused quite a bit on the core of the software, so the data model, I pushed for decoupling from MediaWiki, creating standalone libraries.
Right. Okay.
So I turned the data model into a standalone library, which you can download with Composer. It's the PHP package manager. So you can use that in your own projects that are doing something with Wikibase.
Yeah.
And
it's
also, yeah.
Sorry, and it's also in use by Semantic MediaWiki.
The data model library? No, it's not.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Very specific to Wikibase. So it's basically describing the structure of the data inside of Wikibase. So you have these statements on items, and statements have properties. They have certain values and qualifiers and references and all that stuff. So that library itself depends on some more foundational libraries called data values, which represent really the values themselves. So for instance, a coordinate or a value in time, something like that.
Right.
And that was inspired by what's in Semantic MediaWiki. And the idea was to write this in such a way that Semantic MediaWiki could also use this, and that we would only need to maintain one set of these things, and we would gain a whole pile of interoperability, and maybe it would become easy then to use tools that were written for Semantic MediaWiki, such as all the various visualization formats, also with the data that's inside of Wikibase.
Right.
So unfortunately, we never got to actually doing that bit. So even though the stuff used by Wikidata is inspired by Semantic MediaWiki, it's different.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you think obviously we've dealt a lot with visualizations. That's how you got your start in the whole thing. Do you think Wikibase will or should in the future be able to do direct visualizations of its own data?
Yeah, that's really a product question, and I don't think you can answer that looking at the software itself. It really depends on what you want to do with it. So if you're a third party and you want to run your own wiki that has data in there via Wikibase, and you want to visualize it, then naturally this would be a very nice thing to have that's missing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not clear for me that that's the best approach for Wikimedia, though, for the Wikidata use case itself. And I'm not sure what the position of the various product people that are in charge of that is.
Yeah, okay. So you said you just recently, this year, I guess, left the Wikidata project?
That's when I left Wikimedia Deutschland.
I see, okay,
so
okay.
In some sense, I left the Wikidata project a lot earlier.
Right, that's what I thought, yeah.
2015 or 16 or so, I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there were some interpersonal problems there, and yeah, I just didn't feel good being in that team anymore.
I see.
And luckily there was an opportunity to start working in a new team at Wikimedia Deutschland. We had some people working on the fundraising software there, which is the thing that you interact with when you click one of those banners that show up every now and then at the top of Wikipedia to enter your payment data and so on. And yeah, there was a lot of technical debt there. So we had problems introducing new features before I joined the project there. And at some point we figured that we needed to rewrite this thing to move ahead. And yeah, that's when I joined in, and I led a small team of 3 people initially doing that. And that was really a lot of fun. This was also something not built on top of MediaWiki, giving us a lot more freedom in what we could do on the technical side. So this was quite educational for me.
Yeah, cool. What was that called?
The software is called, a bit confusingly, FundraisingFrontend, where frontend refers to the fact that this is the software that the Wikipedia users interact with, as opposed to another application that fundraising staff interacts with for moderation and analytics purposes.
Yeah, okay.
And that thing is on the GitHub of Wikimedia Deutschland, which is github.com/WMDE. It's one of the pinned repositories there. And I also did a number of blog posts on the architecture of this application, and did a number of talks on conferences, including, to me, surprisingly, a keynote. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I submitted this talk to some conference I've never been to and did not know the organizers from, and I didn't really have much expectations there. And then they were, "Oh, you want to do the keynote?"
What conference is this?
I might actually have forgotten the name. I think it was in Munich or something.
Yeah, okay.
Clean Code Days, it's called.
Oh, wow. Cool. We'll get to the clean code stuff. That's pretty impressive. Well, clearly, everything Wikipedia related is automatically, prestigious and high profile.
I'm pretty sure that's why the talk got put as keynote, because
Right.
it was titled "Clean Architecture at Wikimedia."
Yeah. I have. I'll put in the link on the episode page for this, for the code base and the actual site that it's running on, which looks like Spenden. I don't know. .wikimedia.de. Yeah. Cool. So this is. It's not. Is it even PHP?
Oh yeah, it's PHP.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I seem to remember that I guess it must have been right soon after you left the Wikidata project. You were looking into different ways to try to make a business out of Wikidata, whether it was consulting company helping people to run queries, or something else, something more technical, maybe. It makes sense for someone who's really into Wikidata, not just you, that they might try to make a living off of it. Do you have any thoughts about that? Maybe it's easier now than it was a few years ago, as Wikidata becomes a bigger and bigger deal and more people try to make use of its data.
So I got the ID back in 2012 to try to somehow monetize my knowledge and involvement with the project more.
Oh wow, that's right when it started.
Yeah. So it took some time for us to actually start doing something. Me and two people that actually started doing something, and we created some things, and we also learned a lot of lessons on how to not do a startup. So normally you want to start with finding demand for something, and then you can build something to meet that demand. And we started by building something and then finding out that there was not really demand, or only demand from people that wouldn't really pay anything for it. So
yeah, okay. Well, yeah, that's a common issue in tech startups. Is it's kind of a chicken and egg problem. Figuring, until people actually see the product, they can't really know if they want it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, do you think at this point now? I wouldn't say Wikidata is well known, but it's certainly headed in that trajectory. Do you think at this point there's for whether it's you or anyone listening to this who has wanted to turn their love of Wikidata into an occupation? Do you have any thoughts on that?
At the moment, your best bet is probably to apply for the job at Wikimedia Deutschland.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't have any great ideas of how to create money providing additional services around Wikidata. So there's things like hosting of the Wikibase software that might or might not turn out to be a worthwhile pursuit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll get to that later too, I think. So After Wikidata, you mentioned the fundraising thing. You also were working at one point for the Wikimedia Foundation itself in San Francisco, no? I guess it must have been remotely.
Yeah, this was remotely, and this was in 2011 and 12. I was still actually working for them for some time while I was in the Wikidata team, and like the first half year or so. And I did a number of smaller things there. I remember I did a bunch of work on the upload wizard. And the biggest thing I did probably was working on the education program extension. And that was a lot of fun as well. I really enjoyed working together with Frank, who was leading the education initiative back then.
Cool. So what was that extension or software?
It was called Education Program, and it allowed there was this initiative to get students to work on Wikipedia and to sort of track what they were doing and to support them. And this extension allowed managing courses for students on Wikipedia.
Yeah, cool. There's a whole separate foundation, I guess, Wiki Education Foundation or something like that. Is it?
Yeah, that's a spin-off of that. So it's the same people that were involved with this back then, and this is also run by Frank. And I recently talked to their lead developer because I was curious what they're doing technology-wise now. And they're doing something that's decoupled from MediaWiki, which I think is probably a good approach.
Oh, okay. So you now do MediaWiki consulting. Were you doing anything else between then and now?
Can you define
in the last
then?
few years? Well, other than the education program stuff and some of the other software that we mentioned.
Right. So after I worked on the fundraising project, when we were done with the rewrite of the software, I stayed in the team for some time, working on new features, and then I kind of got bored with that and got into doing more general stuff at Wikimedia Deutschland. And I also reduced my time back then. So at some point I switched to 16 hours per week or something like that, to just have more time for myself, to read more and get into some topics I was interested about back then. And one of the things was entrepreneurship. So reading about how to manage a business and how to start things. Things around like the lean startup and so on. And then I started looking for ways to just for good opportunities to start some new service. And since I knew a lot about MediaWiki and already have a lot of contacts there, it's kind of an obvious thing for me to pursue. After that I actually kind of got involved more again with the Wikidata stuff for a short while, for half a year or a bit more, interacting with the team there on an increased basis, and again with focus on education around software design, and also setting some examples in the code base and so on, and analyzing some problems. And then halfway through last year, 2018, I started really planning on how to get started with doing some consulting around MediaWiki and like what the best approaches there would be. And I've known Karsten for quite some time, I think 9 years or so. And while we've never formally worked together, he's been volunteering things around Semantic MediaWiki for so long, and me as well, that we've often collaborated. And since we're both in Berlin, at some point, I realized we're both in Berlin, so we should just have a drink together and say hi, right? We did that a few years ago. And then last year I figured, it's been so long, let's do that again. And while we were having dinner together, then it dawned on me that our skill sets are very complementary. So Karsten is, he was already running a business called WikiHoster, and there one of the main things he does is provide support to people, and he really likes doing that, and the people are also happy with the kind of support he provides. And on the other side, he doesn't really know the programming stuff. And for me, I'm really into the programming side of things, and I don't want people calling me about how do I do this thing in my wiki, right? So it's a nice combination to work together, and that dawned on me during that meeting, and that's how we got started with Professional.Wiki.
Yeah, cool. When did it actually launch, the company? Or service, the organization?
We started working on this at the end of last year, and our goal was to launch in January 1st of this year. And that got delayed by quite a bit because of bureaucratic reasons. We need to submit some authorization stuff to some local government agency thing, and what's happened there is they have specific people responsible for a subset of the new applications for businesses, depending on the first letter of the business, right? So you have the person responsible for businesses starting with A and one with B and so on. And the person responsible for our letter was sick for some weeks, so nothing happened there, right? So even though we had our website ready and so on, the actual public launch of our company was in April or something like that. So basically, we've only been going for a half a year so far.
Yeah. Okay. How's it going so far?
This is going pretty well.
Cool. There's one thing you guys do that I think is very intriguing, which is to publish all your rates right on your webpage with different service levels for hosting, support, and so on. I don't know if any other MediaWiki consulting company does that. It makes a lot of sense to have upfront rates, I think, and I have to admit that I'm actually thinking of copying your idea for my own company. Just wanted to note that. I think it's cool. There is the whole consulting thing looks great. There is one thing I find funny about it, which is that now you have to be a sort of evangelist for MediaWiki, even though before you've been very critical of the MediaWiki software, and you got into that to some extent before, talking about technical debt and clean code and all of that. So first of all, is there anything about the actual working of the MediaWiki software that you have problems with, or is it just the code, or do you no longer have problems with the code of MediaWiki?
I agree. That's kind of funny and a bit of a contradiction. And
right.
I need to be a bit more careful in what I say there now. I think there is serious problems with the software itself on architecture and design perspective. Then again, that's the case for most software out there. So if you look at competing software, I don't think it's a lot better. And a big saving grace for MediaWiki is that it has this massive community of people working on it, all these volunteers and the people at the foundation. So that offsets that problem to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think MediaWiki does provide a good amount of value. I mean, it's not the right tool for every job. For instance, our website for Professional.Wiki is not running MediaWiki, since I think it wouldn't make sense there.
Right.
But for collaborative projects, especially where you need structured data in like a flexible format, then I think it can be a great tool.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to the code thing. Are there any software applications that you know of that you would consider well written? That looking at the code, nothing upsets you about it.
I think the FundraisingFrontend application that we talked about before is pretty decent. But I'm not that familiar with many code bases in details. And of course, most code bases out there are not open source. So.
Right. So you've mentioned this clean code thing. Most of what I know about that I know from you. I know it was invented or popularized by a guy named Bob Martin. Can you briefly describe that philosophy?
All right. Maybe he invented and popularized the term clean code, but certainly the things that he's talking about are not invented by him and have been around for a long time in the software industry. So none of this is some kind of fad, like the latest great framework or something like that. The things that I think are among the most important when doing software development is first of all, you want to be creating the right thing, right? So
sure.
Their feedback cycles are very important. So you want to learn that you're doing the wrong thing or that you're doing it in the wrong way. You want to learn that as quickly as possible. And one of the tools there on the more technical level is having automated tests. So I think for most projects it's quite important to have at least some level of automated tests. And then if you're writing using an object-oriented language, you want to follow standard object-oriented design. So you want to follow things like the solid principles. So for instance, you don't want to stuff different responsibilities together in one class. So no HTML in SQL in the same place.
Right.
You want to do things like favoring composition over inheritance and avoid creating deep inheritance hierarchies for code reuse. Also know about design patterns, things like that. And of course, on a function level, you want to not create too big functions, you want to do dependency injection, all this kind of stuff. And you can group that together under some umbrella term like clean code. I think it's more important to focus on the fundamental principles.
Yeah. Okay. All of that makes sense. I don't know how well you know my code. In general, I'd like to think I follow most of that. There's one major exception I know, which is in my page forms extension. There's one function which does it's really the heart of the code. It's 1,000 lines or something or more. That's caused problems before, but that's my confession. So back to consulting stuff. Yeah, among other things, you guys claim that you run the world's first professional Wikibase hosting service. You mentioned Wikibase hosting as an example of some way to monetize that software. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think you guys are still the only professional Wikibase hosting service at this point. And maybe we haven't mentioned it, but that's the software that powers Wikidata. So it would be for people who want to have their own Wikidata-like site. Have you gotten any interest in Wikibase stuff so far?
There has been some interest, though at the moment we do not have any paying customers for this.
Yeah, okay. Well, so let me put you on the spot here. Here's my tough question. So I have a hypothetical. Somebody emails you and says, I want to set up a wiki to store and publish documentation and data about all the products at our company. It's going to be a public wiki. I know I want to use MediaWiki, but beyond that, I've heard of these extensions called Cargo, Semantic MediaWiki, and Wikibase. And I've heard that they could all be helpful for what I need, but I'm not sure which one we should go with, if any. What would you recommend? So what would you say to them?
Okay, I'm not at all surprised by this question. I had no idea what you would be asking me during this podcast. I was quite curious, but this one was quite obvious.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah. I've actually been contacted recently by a bunch of people asking me, should I use Semantic MediaWiki or Wikibase? And one of them linked an item on Quora, this question answer site from 2014, where somebody was asking that exact question. So should I use Semantic MediaWiki or Wikibase for my use case? And my answer from back then, 5 years ago, is still quite current. I think that for most people, you do not want to be using Wikibase at the moment because of some fundamental issues there. So one of them is that there are no releases of the software. So there's just a development copy, and you can install that. But then there will be breaking changes to all kinds of things, and this will not really be documented. So I think for most serious users, that already makes it a no-go. Also, Wikibase, so a bit of history there is that Danny and Marcus created Semantic MediaWiki with Wikipedia in mind, right? They wanted to create this structured Wikipedia, and for various reasons, this Semantic MediaWiki never got onto Wikipedia, but
right.
it turned out to be very useful for many other use cases, and so it's now installed on thousands of public wikis. And then later, when Danny got funding for Wikidata, the idea was, let's create a software that's really specifically aimed at the use case of Wikipedia and not do any of the other stuff. So that's what Wikibase is at the moment. It's really focused on the Wikipedia use case, and till perhaps maybe very recently, essentially all the development effort has been solely focused on that. So it just doesn't have the features that Semantic MediaWiki and Cargo have that are aimed at the typical non-Wikipedia use cases. So that's a second big point. And then another one is, I suppose that one is kind of more political in some way. Since the software is really developed by Wikimedia Dutchland for the Wikipedia use case, and that's always going to be the priority, you're not in a very good position as a company relying on that. And for instance, recently the foundation itself said they are kind of phasing out support for third parties more than they've been doing in the past. I think Semantic MediaWiki is a much safer bet, and it has the functionality that you would expect. While in case of Wikibase, it doesn't have like inline queries like Cargo and Semantic MediaWiki have. And also the data model is a bunch more complex, which is needed for Wikipedia, right? So the population of New York is not just one number, it's like this number according to that survey. And if you don't need that and you don't need the multilingual support, it's going to get in your way because it's not optional. It's going to always be in there, and you cannot turn it off.
Yeah. Does it bother you like it bothers me when the Wikimedia Foundation, seems to regularly publicize the idea of running Wikibase, whether it's training sessions for people to install Wikibase, or just profiles of people using it, that kind of thing, whereas they haven't mentioned Semantic MediaWiki or anything else?
It does. I'm not happy with that. And back in 2012, I was actually advocating in making the software more usable for third parties, and having stuff like releases. And I kind of gave up on that in 2013 or so, around that time. And only recently, like in the last 12 months or so, has Wikimedia Deutschland started to push the idea of other people also using Wikibase. And I'm not entirely sure what started this. Maybe it's some search for relevance or some form of success theater, or maybe I'm being too cynical there. But I'm really not happy with the way this is approached, because I don't think it's in the interest of the third parties. I think very important information is left out, which is essentially the stuff I mentioned earlier. And typically the message is more and more people are using Wikibase, and you should give it a try as well for your organization. And then if you look at the actual numbers of people that really use it, and I've checked some of the announcements, and then it turns out that half the wikis are no longer up. The remaining half are mostly test wikis, and of the ones that aren't, most of them have zero usage or are not really using Wikibase, just have it installed. So I have some ethical qualms with what's being done there. So perhaps some of the people that are pushing this are not really aware of what they're doing and might not know about the shortcomings themselves.
Yeah, I think it might be in part the not invented here syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that concept.
I definitely know this, and that's something that is a thing in the Wikimedia universe for sure.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we've covered. So this person says, okay. So I'm not going to use Wikibase, but that still leaves Cargo and Semantic MediaWiki. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Asks this person.
All right, so I have never used Cargo myself, and I've not really looked at it that much recently, so I cannot really compare the features that much. And if somebody was asking me about this, then I would probably say something along those lines. To you, I would also say that I really like some of the motivations you had for creating Cargo. So from a software design perspective, having less code is definitely a nice thing, right? Less custom stuff that you created yourself is less things to maintain. I like some of the design choices you made there with SQL and so on.
Cool.
So that said, I think we run into some serious creative differences when it comes to how you actually implemented Cargo.
All right. From a clean code perspective?
From a software design and maintainability perspective, yes.
All right. But if someone were to ask you guys to work with Cargo, or more generally any extension you haven't worked with and don't really know about. Do you consider yourselves a full service consulting company, or are you opinionated in the software sense of the term, that you advocate specific things and that's what you implement?
If somebody requests to have hosting with Cargo, then we can definitely consider that. Or standard hosting plans come with Semantic MediaWiki and a whole pile of other extensions. And you can see that on our website on the hosting page. There is some detailed list of what's in each of our hosting plans. And yeah, it's definitely possible to also do Cargo there. I don't really have a strong opinion about this, and I'm not religious about which tool is better.
Right. Okay. That covers most of what I wanted to talk about. Is anything you were expecting me to ask about, or anything you want to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
I guess I was expecting you maybe to ask more about my new company and what our thoughts there were with creating this, and then what our plans for the future are.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, what are your plans for the future, and what are you working on? As far as the company, or I guess in general, what are you working on?
Yeah, actually, we haven't really talked a lot about stuff in the future.
Right.
For instance, what our thoughts are on where the MediaWiki space is going and things like that. And then I'm also quite curious on what your thoughts are. So
cool. Let's talk about all those things.
I'll start with Professional.Wiki bit. So there, we are starting as a typical consultancy, similar to WikiWorks. We have big aspirations there in that we want to change the whole wiki space more. So we don't want to be competing against companies like yours for the same set of customers. I don't know if you have any good numbers on that, but my estimation is that less than €500,000 per year is actually going into third-party development, which is not that huge of a pie. And we see our competitors more as SharePoint and Confluence and big players like that.
Sure.
Where
Absolutely.
often it's probably better for the people to use MediaWiki plus Semantic MediaWiki or plus Cargo, that they will get more value out of it. So yeah, we're looking into how to getting into that market, and we're also building our website in a way we hope that appeals more to such people. So we're trying to get customers that don't already know that they want MediaWiki, but that want the knowledge management tool or something along those lines. So far, our success there is pretty limited. Most of our customers so far already know they want MediaWiki. We're very interested there in talking to people like you and collaborating with the MediaWiki stakeholder group and so on to get more stuff to happen.
Well, that's interesting. Marketing comes up quite a lot. I talked about it with Clément Filippo from Docket just in the previous episode. That's interesting. I mean, it seems to me that there's two different approaches. One is for people who are already looking to have a wiki or MediaWiki specifically, you want to support them and then upsell them on all this other software and features and hosting and stuff. And then the other is people just looking for a knowledge management solution and wouldn't even consider using a wiki and trying to get at that crowd. So the first crowd is a lot smaller, but it's a much easier sell, and the second crowd is gigantic, but it's a much harder sell. So I thought for sure you guys were just focused on the first group because you have wiki in the name after all, you certainly you don't hide the fact that that it's you're MediaWiki based.
Yeah, we're not hiding it, but we very consciously picked Professional Wiki over, say, Professional MediaWiki.
That's interesting. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that? On strategies for marketing to the world, the non-wiki users.
So neither me or Carsten are marketers, so we're actually looking into working together with somebody that's more professional in that arena. So like I said, we're building our website in such a way that hopefully we appeal to these crowds, and we're also looking into how to drive people that are looking for like a knowledge management solution or something to our site, and to show up in comparisons. Things like MediaWiki or Semantic MediaWiki versus SharePoint or what have you.
Yeah. I'm not a marketer either. But all right. Well, it's an ongoing discussion, and that's definitely one of the things that comes up on this podcast a lot is different strategies for raising awareness about all the functionality and power of the MediaWiki and all its extensions.
Mm-hmm. I also think so. Advertising, that's one thing. Another big point is, I think at the moment, to be honest, there is no. The services that are provided and the companies that are providing them, so WikiWorks and Professional.Wiki, are quite small and are probably not suited for big enterprise, right? They will go, well, you have less than 100 employees, so we're not doing business with you, or some shit like that.
Right.
So our hope with Professional Wiki is to, we don't want to just stay me and Carsten and some other people we're working with, but we want to grow and be like a really solid player, so that big enterprise might be less hesitant with using MediaWiki. And a third thing is that some of the software is pretty rough from a user experience point of view. So Semantic MediaWiki allows you to do a lot of things, but some of it is kind of difficult to do as a user, and there is a lot of low-hanging fruit there of things that could be improved interface-wise, and there are things like interface messages that are bad English, like bad grammar and so on. And that would really put me off as a business looking into this software. And it would be nice to get some kind of funding to polish these things. And me and Carsten are actually looking into that, how we can get funding for like more maintenance work of general functionality. Because I don't know what your experience is there, but my experience is that most of the funding that's coming from companies is for specific functionality, like create this new visualization or something like this.
Right.
It's not going to be fix these kind of confusing messages that are kind of confusing for everybody, right?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean. I think the big thing as far as the weaknesses of the interface is just the blank page problem, where you get to the wiki and there's nothing there at the beginning, and you don't know what to do, and it doesn't look anything like SharePoint or whatever it is at that point.
Definitely.
A lot of consulting companies try to solve that problem by creating their own packages of data structure that's built in. I don't know if you guys are thinking about that kind of thing or
we are, and I fully agree that that's a big issue. I also think for a lot of things, it's nice to have all the power of the language of wiki text and Lua and all this kind of stuff. But you're also kind of forced to deal with this, while most of the time you don't really need the extra power, and having something form-based would be a lot better. So I think page forms definitely provides a lot of value. But I think
semantic forms, yeah. Right.
There is still places where you need to edit stuff. For instance, in Semantic MediaWiki, to create a property, you need to put some text in a wiki page, and you need to know the syntax, and you need to know the names of the types. And yeah, this could just be done with a user interface pretty easily. So yeah, I'm looking to get funding for this kind of stuff. And one thought I had to work on this kind of on the side is creating some kind of connection between Wikidata and Semantic MediaWiki. So I'm looking for funding essentially for that, for a project where new software that would allow you to synchronize data between Wikidata and your own local wiki. So you would be able to say, I want to import this data from Wikidata or from some other Wikibase instance. And then it would automatically be kept up to date, and you could combine it with local data. You could query it together with local data and visualize it in all kinds of way, which I think is probably also the more sensible approach to go when it comes to reuse of data in Wikidata, as opposed to people using their own Wikibase instance.
Right, yeah. So you're looking to get funding for that also?
Yeah, this would be a bigger thing, like something around 100,000 euros to do this well, is my estimation at this point. So you would get a lot of things for that, because at least in the Semantic MediaWiki case, if you can import the data from Wikidata, and it's inside of Semantic MediaWiki, you get so much tooling for free, right? You get all the visualizations and so on.
Sure, yeah. So it would be stored in Semantic MediaWiki, or you would query your local data alongside the outside semantic.
My idea is to store it in Semantic MediaWiki. So then you get the tooling for free, like I said, right? You do not need to modify anything that's doing querying and so on, because it won't really know that the data is not coming from, or that is coming from Wikidata.
Right. It goes against the principles of the semantic web to some extent. I mean, the idea there, which I as far as I know hasn't ever been implemented, is well, not the idea there, but the possibility there is to have, a variety of data sources, and you get them all via Sparkle and combine them all together, and then you can create a visualization based on that. So theoretically, that could be the potential. That could be the option, is to have some external library that does all of that and has all these built-in visualizations, and then just call that on a wiki page, and not have it actually be MediaWiki based at all. I don't know if you've thought about that kind of thing, visualization of Sparkle results, but in an automated and what's the word I'm looking for? Distributed way, I guess.
Yeah, that's also an approach to go. Both of these approaches give you different things.
Yeah. Okay. Where are you trying to get funding from?
Whoever wants to fund this, right? We are investigating several sources, and at the moment we don't have anything that's super promising yet.
Yeah. Yeah, funding is tricky. Yeah, that's a known thing for anyone in open source. It's like, if thousands of or millions of people can benefit from something, it still can be hard to get any one of them to pay for that development.
One of the groups of people that this would be really useful for is GLAM institutions, because they want to get at the data that's in Wikidata, but they typically don't have any money. So.
Right. Yeah, it was a Sparkle expert or that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Are you working on anything else or thinking about anything else?
At the moment, most of my how do I say this, productive time in some sense is going into Professional Wiki, and that's something I plan to continue for a long while. So it's not a full-time occupation for me. I'm still taking quite some time to read about things, and I'm also looking for things to do outside of the MediaWiki world. And there I'm particularly interested in doing something with existential risk, which I think is important for more people to work on.
How interesting. Okay. Hopefully that won't become useful, but of course, it's always good to plan. That's very interesting. Back to something you said before. You said you wanted to grow Professional Wiki to become, a giant or large company. Yeah, I mean, a potential other option to try to do the same things to try to get bought by some large consulting company, Accenture or whatever else it is. That's always something I've wondered about. Is how to get MediaWiki and all this software to become an offering from one of these, giant consulting companies. Yeah, I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
I hadn't thought about being bought by such a consulting company, and to be honest, I'm not that familiar with those, so I don't know how much this would help the MediaWiki space. So what I can say about Professional Wiki is that in some sense what we're doing is very safe. I mean, we know that doing consultancy like you are doing is something that works. And for Carsten, it's essentially doing the same thing he was already doing, but rebranded.
Right.
So yeah, maybe we do not reach our ambitions here, but I think it's definitely worth giving it a try. And you mentioned somewhat working together with other people or joining forces, and that's something that at least me personally I'm very open to. The reason I started the collaboration with Carsten is because I think we can just provide better services together and take on bigger clients and so on. I'm open to other people joining this and trying to also pull in the direction of bringing the whole MediaWiki space to a new level.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No. I'm absolutely in favor of joining forces and I too don't really view other consulting companies as competition, given that the real gains are to be made. Taking business away, I guess, from people using SharePoint, Confluence, or just really anything else. Plus you guys are in Europe, so it's a different.
Yeah.
Usually a different set of customers anyway, but yeah, but But even if not, it would be. I wouldn't see you as competition anyway. Yeah, well, it's an ongoing discussion, and then maybe we can talk offline also. We've talked before, but yeah, it'll be good to keep talking about pooling resources, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. All right. I think now we've covered everything. Well, the major stuff. So, yeah. All right. I guess that wraps up this episode. It was great talking to you, Yaron. Thanks for coming on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And this has been another episode of Between the Brackets. I want to again thank my guest, my protege turned colleague, Yaron De Dauw of Wikidata and many other things. Thanks to all of you for listening. I hope you liked it, and see you next time.